All right, we are live. Today is Tuesday, the 7th of February. I've changed around the schedule a little bit. I'm going to explain why in just a second. But today I'm going to complete the chapters 1 through 9 pretest. Then I'm going to go over just kind of a simple example where I tried to put a lot of different stuff in with Flexbox so you can see some examples of it. Tomorrow, I've decided to go out. I'm going to do this afternoon or this evening and build one additional Flexbox example. And to be honest with you, it's going to be more along the lines of what your test will be. All right. And then we'll go from scratch. Okay. And I imagine that'll take somewhere upwards of an hour or so. I don't know. And then I'm also going to lecture tomorrow on chapter 10, which is CSS Grid. So your test I pushed off until Thursday. Friday, as always, will be a lab day. All right. And again, I told people we did some work yesterday with chapter 7 and with chapter 8. All right. And I told people that you could have until Tuesday, tonight, to turn in the 7 and 8 work. Now, to me, 9 and 10 in this book, this is me speaking, are the hardest two chapters in the book. I do want everybody to attempt to do the chapter 9 and do the Flexbox for both the Halloween project and for the shape up, and turn in by midnight Sunday whatever you have, even if it's not much. This stuff is difficult. Like I said, I think what you're going to find, show you this. I mean, I really in chapters 1 to 8, you could make the case that it's getting progressively harder. Okay, I'd agree with that. Probably in that first section, the responsive web design, when we started doing media queries, was probably harder than anything else we had done. But in my opinion, what we're doing now in 9 and 10 are the hardest things. All right. And I've given you a lot of different resources. I'm going to give you a couple more today. In fact, one of them I probably gave you already. But you're probably, if you didn't like 9, this isn't meant to be funny. You're going to like 10 even less. All right. Because basically, where Flexbox allows you to lay things out in a two-dimensional row column type of format, Grid actually brings in 3 dimensions. And it has a row column format, but it also has what's called a z-axis, not a z-index, but a z-axis. So you can do things with it that are very difficult to do with just Flexbox alone. And in addition to that, you can use Flexbox with Grid. All right. So we'll talk about that, but that'll be next week. I think what you'll find, because the week after that, believe it or not, I'll go over everything in chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And you might, at the time, you might think, oh my gosh, how can you go over that many pages? But most of the stuff that's in there is going to be so straightforward that you're going to be, wow, I wish the other stuff was as easy as that. All right. And then we will go over 16, 17, and 18 as well. All right. Now, I do want to mention this to you. I'm going to send this out. You don't have to write it down. I'm going to send it out on the email that I send out to you at the end of each video, where I give you the URL where the video is, etc. But if you are really stuck on this stuff, if you're like, geez, I'm going through, I'm watching his examples, etc., but I'm just totally confused, then, I tried boiling it down to 3 or 4 different things you could look at. One of them is what I'd shown you before. This is from CSS Tricks, and it's called A Complete Guide to Flexbox. And again, I'll give you the URL later today. But what it is it's filled with examples. I can't think of any way for you to learn better than to look at an article or something like this and go through the examples. All right. Then another thing that I found it's basically based off of this, is the ultimate Flexbox cheat sheet. All right. There's a 3-minute video. Okay. But it is just 3 minutes. But then look, how to do this, how to create a Flex container, how to do things in a row, how to do things in a column, etc. So I would strongly suggest that you have these open on Thursday when you're taking the test. All right. I had already mentioned this to you that if you go out to, it's just flexbox.io. This is a course by a guy named Wes Bose. It's free. You come in there, you put in your email like this, and you click join the course. You will get an email to your email address that basically, you just click on it and you can start. I've never gotten any promotional videos from him or anything. All right. And I don't think I think it's because you don't have to. He doesn't notice join 102,000 others in learning with Wes Bose. So there's 20 different videos, but most of them are 3 to 5 minutes long. You just build something. So again, if you're struggling, it would be something I would strongly suggest you take a look at. Then the last thing I'm going to mention before we start up, I'm going to go out to YouTube here. And this is a guy I've told you before. This is a guy that I have followed. And that is, I'm just going to type in here, Brad Traversy. There it is, Flexbox. And he redid it. The one that he did, the one that he did a while ago, 6 years ago, I used to reference that one all the time, but he's gone and redone it, and it's a lot longer now. It's 46 minutes, but you click on that, and what he does is he literally just sits there and starts with an empty. Um, he just starts with basically an empty system, and he just builds. And probably in here, normally what he does, there's the code. All right. And I think I've mentioned this to you before, but just on the off chance that I have not, all right, and that is his code is in what's called a code pen. And you go out to codepen.io. These are all the examples. So you can run through there and take a look at them if you'd like. The other thing that I haven't really talked about in here, and again, I am going to start, but I just want to show you this. Kind of a neat tool. You may or may not agree. But if you go out to jsbin.com, jsbin.com, go out there, and it doesn't look like much. All right. But you'll notice here up here it says HTML, CSS, JavaScript, console, and output. And right now, the only two that are open are HTML and output because they're in blue. But notice if I do this, and I come in here, and let's say as an example, I come in and I put in an H1 tag that just says hello. All right. And then afterwards, I put in a paragraph tag that just says this is a paragraph. All right. Well, you can already see on the output what's happening. Then if you want to, you can click the CSS tab and it opens that up. I'm going to take this tab here, the one for HTML. I'm not going to close it, but I'm going to narrow it. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, hey, take all H1s and make them red. So color red. You can see what happens. All right. And I'll say, take all paragraphs and I don't know, give them a font family of Arial. All right. And give them a font size of 2rem and give them a color of green and a background color of, I don't know, black. All right. And you can see when you do that, a lot of people like this. It's also known as a sandbox because you can sit and play in it. You can remove things at any time. We haven't talked about JavaScript yet, but if I open that up, you could add JavaScript in there. So notice that this is one of the things we'll talk about. So don't worry if it doesn't make any sense, but I'm going to type in here alert, hello. And notice as soon as I typed in alert, what it did. All right. It literally opened that up right away. It opened up an alert. So if I come in here, it's tough to do it like this, but if I come in here now and write hello, there it is. All right. So there's all sorts of stuff. If I don't want this anymore, I just click on here and it goes away. But this is another place you can, for lack of better words, play. You can come in here and you can set up things and put display flex that will sit there and play with this stuff right here. What I am going to do when I get done with this pretest today is I'm going to put that out on a GitHub repo and give all of you permission to view it. And I'm not saying it's the best thing ever. It sure as heck is not. All right. But it's something, if you could put that in here and take a look at it. And the only reason that I'm telling you all this stuff is when you take your test on Thursday, what you might want to do is even have something like this open and be able to play with it. All right. And check and see if, well, geez, I wonder if I did this, how exactly it's going to look, etc. All right. I'll shut up about that now. So again, it's just jsbin.com. That's all. Okay. So again, you will get all of these URLs. There's just 5 of them at the end of the day. So with that said, I'm going to jump back into what we were working on yesterday. And that is, okay, we had been working on the pretest. All right. And just to review, okay, what I had done is I had just changed, had put everything in a wrapper, played with the nav bar a little bit. All right. Made the nav bar flexible with display flex. We did a little bit of work on the anchor tags, the links in there, whatever you want to call them. Also set something up when you hovered. All right. Set something up for each section. I don't think I really have anything in home. I know I put that in there yesterday, but I don't think I have anything in there. And then we did this hero section, and that's about as far as we got yesterday. We didn't get at least much further. And that hero section is normally where you'll put your main page content. All right. And you can see the stuff that was set there. It also had in it an H2 and an H3. All right. So we did that hero section, and then we came in and did our first media query in here. And all this is designed to do is to say that when the navigation bar is between 1 and 640 pixels, the font size will be 1.2 EM, the height will be 30 pixels, and basically that's it. But when we look in here at the nav bar, the height is 60 pixels or 70. It really doesn't matter. You can play around with it. I was jacking around with it before. But the thing is, now when you take a look at this, if I jump our index, all right, and I open it with live server, you can see what it looks like. And when I shrink it down, there's only one breakpoint in here. And what I'm saying is there is only the one the one media query in here. Okay. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot in here right now. Okay. But like I said, I'm building this and I'm kind of doing it in an incremental type of format because I wanted to do that so you would be able to see it as I was doing things. I played with these things. Now, if I click home, it goes there. Click goes right up to the top. About will end up going to the about, but right now, don't worry about it. When we get to it in a little bit, it's going to look a little bit different. So let's go on from here. All right. So this is the HTML. And again, in here, I have gone in and all I've done in here is just started to build the different sections. But really all that's in there right now, okay, is the first section. So let's go in and talk about the about section. All right. So I've got in here a section tag and I got a div with an idea of about. This is in a section and I've created a section class. So I'm going to say class equals section. All right. And then inside of there, I'm going to have another div. And I'm going to say class equals about. Now, sometimes when I do things like this, people get confused. All right. And what I'm saying is, because I've had this question basically put to me before, how can you do that? Whoops, sorry, I'm gonna move that up one. They've said, how can you do that? In other words, how can you have an ID named about and a class named about? Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. The only thing is when I reference this one in my CSS, it has to be # about. And when I reference this one in my CSS, it has to be .about. But it's totally fine to do that. All right. If you don't like doing it that way, of course, you wouldn't do it that way. All right. So I've got this about thing that's in here. All right. And then I'm going to put another P3 in, or an H3 in here, I should say. And it's just going to say, please read my story below. Thanks. Now, if I ran it right now, it wouldn't look very much different. And what I mean is, from what I just ran it said about before. Now, the only thing that's going to be different is underneath that about that you see there, there would be an H3 tag that would say, please read my story below, and nothing else. So I'm going to start putting some stuff in here. Now, when I do this, I purposely used a certain type of naming structure. What do I mean? Well, as I go down here, you could kind of look at this. I'm on what? I'm on line 32 right here. So in a way, if you were looking at this, if you were building this, you could kind of look at it that there have been 32 rows so far. All right, where each line in my CS or in my HTML file would be a row. All right. On the other hand, what I want to do here is I want to put in 3 columns of information on me. I want to say that again. I want to put in 3 columns of information on me. All right. So the reason I'm telling you that is when I did this, I ended up using classes called row and col. The other reason that that's important is when we get done, which will only be in about 3 weeks, with the book that we're currently in, when we get done with that book, before we go into the other book, we're going to spend about 2 weeks going over what's called a framework that's called Bootstrap. All right. And don't worry about it right now. If you want to get a little prelude on it, you could go out to getbootstrap.com and take a look at what's out there. But the reason I'm telling you this is Bootstrap uses row and col all over the place. So this will hopefully get you acclimated to that use. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say div class equal row. All right. And then inside of there, I'm going to have another div. And the class is going to be equal to col. And inside of there, I'm going to have another div. And the class is going to be equal to main. And again, before anybody asks, do you really need all those classes? It's just the way that I laid out the page. And I'd be foolish to say, yeah, I laid it out this way, and this you should all do it this way because it's the best. I'm showing you a way of doing this stuff. All right. Now, what I want to put in here are about, I don't know, I'm going to put in somewhere around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different paragraphs, something like that. All right. But I'm going to lay them out a little bit differently than we've laid them out before. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, just bear with me, please, for a second here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in just 2 blank paragraphs on purpose, just like this. Okay. And the reason I'm doing that is I want 3 columns. Okay. I'm telling you this again. I want 3 columns. So underneath this div right here, this will be my first column right there. All right. So everything that's in up till, I guess I went up, down 1 too many lines, till right there. That will be 1 column. Then I will make a second column. Then I will make a third column. And then I will run the program and it will look pretty butt ugly because we will want to go back then, and we will want to go and add CSS to the row class, to the col class, to the main class, etc. All right, but now I'm going to grab this, all right, where the class is equal to col, and I'm going to come down here and paste it in again. And of course, it always seems to do that, but that's okay. All right, and then finally, I'm going to do it one more time. All right, so I want that to line up. So there, so right here. Now, you might say, well, why'd you do that? What a waste of, or whatever, but hopefully it'll make some sense to you in just a couple minutes. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to turn on word wrap. All right, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in lorem 75. And that's going to give me a paragraph with 75 words in it. Then down below it, I'm going to do the same thing. Lorem 75. Okay, there's 2 paragraphs. Then I'm going to do it again. And again. And 2 more times. Well, let's see, did I miss one? I don't know. Doom, doom, doom. There we are. Put that back in here. So lorem 75 and 1 more time. All right. Now, if I save this right now, and if I go back where I ran the program, which was in here, doesn't look very good. There's the thing we had created before, and there's all that text. So you can see I do have 6 paragraphs, and they are different. They might all start with lorem ipsum, but they're all different. All right. So big deal. Well, let's go in now and let's style those. All right. So we're going to go in to the CSS file right now is what I'm saying. All right. So I'm going to do a file save here. So I've got I'm sure my stuff has been saved, and I'm going to jump into the styles file. All right. I still haven't really put anything in the body yet, but I will soon. And well, I think my nav bar looks okay right now. Okay. And now I've got that nav bar that I want to be able to display as flex. You've already seen that. All right. But it's not just the nav bar that I want to display as flex. I also want my row to display as flex. So I'm going to come in here and put in a comma. And then right here, I'm going to put, dot row. So that means that that row that I put in earlier, there was just one row, and that row had 3 columns in it. But that row, just like the nav bar, will now be able to be displayed as flex. All right, so remember, what I'm saying is that that row is now a flex container. All right. And then we've got our nav A. I don't think I changed anything in here. Our hover, etc. I don't think I changed anything in there. All right. It's interesting because maybe I do want to put that home back in there because I had a home here and I don't know if I need. I was monkeying around with this all last weekend and I would put stuff in and then take it out and put it in and take it out. But I'm going to just try this. Right now, this is referencing nothing. And again, whoops. And again, I might just get rid of it in just a bit. Okay. So we've got our hero section. I didn't change anything in here, not to my knowledge. Hero, the H1, the H2. All right, or the H2 and H3. So let's go in and start making some changes in here. What do I mean? I mean, let's start making changes in the about section. So I'll make a couple changes and we'll go back and look at it. Then I'll make a couple more changes and we'll go back and look at it. All right. So the first thing is here, I want to do some changes on our H2 and H3. So for our H2, all right, I'm going to make it bigger, so the font size. I'm going to make it 3 M's, which usually is about 48 pixels. I'm going to say text transform uppercase. We haven't done really anything with this yet, because that's more something that's later in the book. But what that will do is that will take that H2 heading that's right there, and regardless of whether I wrote it in uppercase, lowercase, or mixed case, it will take the entire heading and make it uppercase. You oftentimes see people do that and use text transform. That way, if they've got a bunch of text, they don't have to worry about the case if they want to make sure that it eventually goes to uppercase. All right. And finally, I'm going to say text align center. All right. So that's my about H2. All right. Now let's do the about for our H3. And it's going to be much the same. So I'm going to set the font size, not from 3M, but to 2M. And I'll do another text align, center. Okay. Now, again, if for some reason, if for some reason I wanted these two things, the H2s and the H3s to be the same, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But if I wanted them to be the same, in other words, I wanted both of them to have all three of these things, then I could have said dot about H2, comma, dot about H3. All right, I don't want them to have the same things. That's why I didn't do it. But I'm going to do a file, save all. I'm going to jump back into here, and I'm going to go and look here. And you can see this is bigger. All right, and you can also see that it's centered. All right, and you can also start to see how this has been set up here. All right, but when I go in here and I look at it, that doesn't look very good. So we're going to have to fix that up, and that's what we're going to do right now. All right. Okay, so like I said, it's not looking bad right now. And since we've set it up in a column or row format, it's got a little bit of styling to it right now, but we're going to put some extra styling in there, and we're going to try to make it look nicer right now. And we're going to do that by basically coming in and not putting in that much stuff. All right. But using some Flexbox and using some other stuff, probably only about 15 or 20 lines of CSS. So let's go in and do that right now. So I'm jumping back in, I'll do another file save here, and then jump into my CSS. All right, so I just did the about with the H3, and now I'm going to do the col. Okay, and with the col, I'm going to put in here flex 1. And I'm going to put it, flex 1. And after that, we're going to put in a border. It will be 1 pixel, solid, and let's just give it a color of like CCC, which is a kind of a darker gray color. And we'll give it some padding. 10 pixels should be fine. All right, what did that do? It's easier to show you. So I'm going to say File, Save All, and then again, let's go back in and look at it. All right, now you can see, hopefully at least, we've got some order to this. By setting up those columns, what we said was flex 1. We wanted each column to take up the same amount of room in here. Now, it's still going to look bad when we shrink it down. We'll have to work on that in a bit. All right, that's no biggie. That's fine. But you can see we're starting to get some work done on here, and hopefully at least you agree it's looking better. Now, that might be a lot. Please read my story. I mean, that's a pretty big story. You may not want to put all that much in a portfolio, but there's nothing to say you couldn't have, for example, text here and a picture there of you or whatever, and maybe something else, a code sample or something. All right. So we've got that part done. Let's continue on then. Whoops, let's continue on here. And we've got the col done. And you might remember we also had a class in there. And that class that we had in there was, we had a class called main. We didn't have to do anything to our row class except, basically display it as being flex. So main, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna change the background color. I'm just gonna make it white. Again, I could use the word white, but I'm gonna use pound FFF. All right, which is white. I'm gonna give it a minimum height. And when you give it a minimum height, there's two ways you can do this. I can come in here and say something like 100 pixels, and it'll always take up at least 100 pixels. That's not a problem. Or I can give it a view height. So I'm going to put in here 60 VH, 60% of the screen. I'll give it a little bit of padding. And I want the text to be a little bigger. So I'm going to put in here font size. And I'm going to set it to 1.2 ems. All right. So you can see the changes I've made. And again, I'm going to do a save all. And I'm going to jump back into here. And now you can see what it looks like. Now, there's all sorts of things that could be done to this. There are ways, you'll notice they're all starting at the same point. They're not all ending at the same point because they have different text. If you wanted to, you could make them all end at the same point. And there's different ways of doing it. You could add more text. All right, you could play around with it a little bit, but this is more reminiscent of the way, if you read a book, typically, or an article, it's going to look when you've got a multi-page article. Also, I may or may not have mentioned this to you before. Again, I may or may not have mentioned this, but when you're sitting there working on this stuff, all right, one thing that you want to do, one thing I did when I started was I kind of had a picture in mind of what I wanted to do. And I laid it out. And again, I had talked about getting you guys that tool. They haven't gotten back to me yet, but I showed you where it was on there, that balsamic tool that's out there, the wireframing tool. All right. But at least I came in here with some kind of an idea of what I wanted this to look like before I started. All right. And again, I'm not saying it's perfect. It's far from perfect. All right. Okay. So one more thing I want to do, and then we're going to go back to the HTML. And that is in here, all the H2s that are right underneath a section. All right. So every time I had a section, I put an H2 under it. So if I just did this, it would do every H2 that was in there, whether it was in a section or not. But if I do this and I say section dot section, and underneath that, I say greater than H2, that will target, so to speak, just those H2 tags that are right underneath a section class. And that's what I want. Okay, I'm just going to put a couple lines in here. Again, I'll say that I want all of them to do a text transform into uppercase. Okay, I probably could even remove it from the one that I added here then. Okay, I think I'll be able to do that. And we'll look in just a moment. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say text align center. I'll put a bottom border on here. Again, all the stuff I'm doing here, they're just aesthetics. And again, let's be, all right. We'll put some padding in here. And we'll change the font size. Let's make it 2.5 em. Okay. Now what I should be able to do, since these are all the H2s right under a section tag, I don't even think I'm going to need this anymore. All right, because I've already got the text align center, I've got the text transform, and I've got a font size. So what I'm going to do is I just want to take this for now and comment. I've learned over time, if you've got something, oh, I don't need that anymore, don't just necessarily remove it. All right, comment it out and take a look and make sure before you remove anything, all right, that you really and truly don't need it anymore. Okay, so here's the end of it. All right, you'll notice, well, that doesn't look right. So something is goofed up. So maybe I did need that. All right, and that's fine. But you can see the rest of it, like I said, looks like it's done. So we're ready next to go into the resume section. So let me undo this. All right, so let me do a save all. And let me go back. And yep, it's now looking the way I want it to look. All right. And right now, too, I should be able to, I wanted to be able to jump. I don't know why it's goofing. It's a little goofy here. It's supposed to jump to there, but it appears to jump down about one line further than that. I'm not sure why it's doing that. All right, but we've got two fifths, so to speak. We have 2/5 of what we want done. All right, and again, I'm just going to take for granted that if you've got any questions and you're here live, that you're going to ask. Otherwise, if you're watching this on tape and if something doesn't make sense, you're going to ask. All right, so the next thing that we're going to put in there after all of this stuff that we put in is going to be our resume. Now, two things. First of all, if you haven't written a resume yet, you really should. And when you write a resume, don't go out and like use the resume template from Word. That's not professional. There was a site, I believe it's called, I could be wrong here, just resume.io, right? And that would get you started. Okay. I'm going to show you my resume in just a moment. And I will include mine with everything. So notice it says create my resume. So it'll walk you through and it'll ask you questions and the like, and it'll give you these are some templates that you can use. All right. I don't have my picture on mine. A lot of people like that. All right. Mine is more probably like this, and you'll see it in just a moment. All right. But if you don't have a resume, you should create one. And I'll have students who will say to me, hey, I'm 19. I had a guy that he graduated about 5 years ago, Colin. And he's like, I've been working at McDonald's for about 5 years. Okay, what do you do there? I'm an assistant manager. Well, that's something to put down. All right, you rose to assistant manager and different things that you do, etc. But I'll show you in mine in just a second. And this actually won't take very much time to put in here. Okay, I've got 2 copies of my resume. Okay, just so you see them. All right, I think I've got them in here. I better, otherwise I'll better move them in very quickly. So let's see, here's the pretest. And I don't, so I'm going to grab them and put them in here. So we do have them. And there they are. All right. So with my resume, I can bring it up either in Microsoft Word form. All right. And there it is. It's also recommended that now you may only have enough stuff to put on a resume to cover 1 page, which is totally okay. I've had people that I've seen their resumes and they're 6 pages long. That you shouldn't do. All right. And, typically 1 page front and back or 2 pages, however you look at it, that's considered to be okay. All right. The other thing too is I went back and I saved that Word file as a PDF. Sometimes people like to see your resume as a PDF. So I have it in both. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back into my program here that we've been working on, and I'm going to give people the chance to either download it as a Word file, all right, or open it immediately as a PDF. All right, so let's go down and do that. So that's the next section here. That's the resume section. All right, so I've got section div ID equal resume, and I didn't do a lot of stuff with this. So I just came in here and put in graph, and I said, download my resume in, okay, and I'll put it in a new line, a href equals, and this is the name of it, JPS, my initials, so JPS hyphen current resume dot docx. So that's, again, that's the one there. And I put here Word format, or open a, and again, I'll put this on a new line so you can see everything I'm doing, a href equals, and it's the same name, but it's got PDF on the end instead of docx. And I also put in here a target equals underscore blank. And PDF version. That's it. Not much. I think you'd agree with that. So if I do a file, save all, and I go back and I take a look at what I've got here, let me go back to this and move back to here. All right. That's what I've added. Not a whole boatload full of stuff. All right. And I've done absolutely here, I have done absolutely nothing as far as uh, prettying this up or doing whatever. So I'm going to do that in just a second. All right. So what do I have here? I've got an H2 and I've got a paragraph, and that's it. So let's go back again and we will go into our CSS. All right. And we ended up right before our media queries. Now I want to go in here and add. It was an ID, so pound resume. And for the H2, I'm going to do a font size of 3 rem and a text align center. And for the paragraph stuff that's in there, I'm going to do a font size of 2 rem, rem or m. It shouldn't really matter. I think I used m in mine, so let's just put in there m's. We're going to talk about the differences later between rems and m's. And again, a text align center. Okay, so that's all I've done. So let's do a file, save all, and let's take a look. So underneath that, I now have this, and again, not much in there, okay? But when you look at it, this should do a download down here when I click it. So when I click, and it is, there's the download, JPS current resume, good. And open a PDF version. I don't need that period inside of my hyperlink, but that's okay. So I'm going to click on this, and it should open it, but it opens it in a separate window. So there it is. Okay. So if somebody wants to do that and then go, oh, geez, I want to go back to the document, always do stuff like that where you open it up into a separate window. All right. So the only thing that I want to come back and do in here is in here, I want to take that period that I put in there and I want to put it outside of the hyperlink. To me, that just looks more professional. All right. I could have even taken and just put PDF in there and then taken version and put that all outside. Maybe that looks better. All this stuff, when you're working on this, it's a matter of taste as far as what you do and how you do it. So now notice it looks like this. I don't know if that's better or worse. It looks like I included a space in there, but it's all up to you as far as how you do this. But remember that when you do this, what you're doing in here is this is basically the picture that you are showing to a potential employer. All right. And again, by sitting in there and having an electronic portfolio, all right, and either, you know, what I've had people do too is, yeah, they'll turn in a resume, and then on that resume they'll put a link to their electronic portfolio, and you can see here we're doing it in the other direction. All right, so that was that. Let's go on, and we won't finish all of it before the break. All right, but let's go on because what we have left to do is the portfolio and the contact, and then our footer. All right. So far, again, we've done our home part, we've done our about, and we've done our resume. And all of it, as far as I know, at least. All right. If you don't like the way this looks, we could have made this that it went down to 1 as well. So there's a lot of things we can still do here. Look, it looks like I didn't do anything here, so I needed to display flex. All right. And I needed to break it down. So I'm missing that. I'll have to fix that. All right. And then down here, that doesn't look terrible right now. But what we can do if we want to, what a lot of people do is when you shrink this down, that might look pretty big on a phone. So in their media queries, a lot of times what people end up doing on their media queries is they come in and they change the font size. Okay. All right. So let me look real quick. And we'll look right now. So I'm going to go back to my style here. All right. And let's make a couple changes in the media query here, because we didn't do any changes for our hero. We didn't do any changes in here for our row and for our card. So let's make a couple changes and see if we can make this look a little nicer, the stuff that we just did. So let's go in and do the hero. And I'm going to change quite a bit of it. I'm going to make some margin there. Change the width. Make sure it's centered. Put a display flex in here. Justify content rather. We're going to look at some of this stuff after we finish this project that we're working on right now. Tell that to center, align items, center, and we'll put some padding. This might be a little extreme, but I got 100 pixels on mine. So again, this is all in the media query. So this is all when it reaches a size that is less than 640. All right. And actually, a common size you'll see in here is, rather than 640, quite often you'll see like 748, because that's typically a tablet size. All right. So let's make a couple more things in here. The Hero H2. Let's go in and shrink down the font size a little bit. We'll make it 2 rem. That's it. And in our H3, let's go in and make the font size there 1 rem. And I don't think I need this, but I'm going to put in align item center in there anyway. All right. And then finally, let's do a little bit of work with our row, just our row. All right. So I'm going to come in here and just make one change, and you're going to see something. I'm not going to say that's remarkable, but again, remember, I'm going to do a file save all, and I want to show you what we've done so far. All right. So when you look in here, and it looks like I goofed that up, but we'll fix it. All right. When this gets smaller now, no, it's not doing anything. Let's make sure that I saved. All right. And yeah, it looks terrible. We're going to change that right now with literally one line of CSS. Right now, it is showing in a columnar format in 3 columns. That's exactly what we told it to do. But if we come back in here and we say dot row, and we say instead flex direction column, all right, and then we go, well, the other one we don't have there. Let's see, from row to column and doing nothing else. All right, doesn't look any different here, but what happens when we shrink it down? Well, that got goofed up, but we'll have to work on that. Now look at it. That is in a columnar format. So just making that one change, and you'll notice on this, when it gets bigger, it'll get to a point and it'll back again. All right. There we go. So boom to boom. So this whole paragraph, all right, it looks like they are pretty much the same here, but notice it's maxim, isti, whatever. But when I go and shrink that down, there it is. All right. So one of the things I really wanted you to get across, and again, I'll have to fix that. That's no biggie. All right. That I really want to get across to you is the fact that when we're doing this, this is in a row format. All right. And even though they're columns, it's in a row type of format. That's the default. It puts as many in a row as it can. But by changing the flex direction to column, we put it into a columnar format. All right. And what that means is when we were in a row format, the main axis were rows. All right. And the minor axis were columns, and then we flipped it. All right. It is 8:59. Let's take a break and let's come back in 10 minutes. Any questions at all, Grant, before we go on?
Just real quick, I think yesterday you were having trouble with the nav bar not being
Yeah.
centered and not collapsing right, and I was just wondering if you could show that code because it looks like it's working on your end now.
Yep. Let's see. So here we had position fixed, top 0, left 0. I don't remember what I changed, to be honest with you. I did it right after class,
Okay.
but I'll leave. And again, what's going to happen is I'm when I get done with this, I'm going to save it out to a GitHub repo. All right. And I
Okay,
will give
cool.
everybody access to it. It won't be perfect. I just no excuses. I just don't have the time to keep twiddling with it and do this and do this and do this. All right. But it'll be pretty much finished. All right. Okay. I'll see you at 10 after.
Okay.
All right, then let's continue on. So what's left is the portfolio, the contact, and the footer. So let's just do them in order. So we'll do the portfolio next. And I'm going to put a div in here. And the idea is these things are supposed to look like cards. So I'm going to say class equal cards. And we'll make that class in a little bit. And then inside of there, I'm going to have another div that's going to say class equal card. All right, so we will have the cards class, which will end up being our Flex container, and we'll have cards, individual things, a card. So this will be our Flex container. These will be our Flex items. We're going to have 6 of these. All right, now I'm going to make one of them, and I'm going to copy it over 6 times and then just make some changes to it. So we're going to first have in here an image. Let's see, source is images slash, and this was just called, I believe, website 1. No, it doesn't like that, so let's see. Let's double check and make sure it's here. There's images. No, there they are, website 1, etc. So they're there. I don't know why it's not picking it up with the IntelliSense that's in here, but it's not. So website 01.jpg, another div with a class that I called output. And again, as always, you can call these things whatever you want. All right, and inside of there, it'll have an H3. And it's going to say for the first one, architecture site. And then we're going to have a button that's going to say, oops, GitHub repo. Okay. Now, just so you're aware of this, I'm about to copy this 6 times, but I literally just went out to the internet and found these pictures. There's nothing special about them. So again, there'll be one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, and there's one. And the only reason I took those is I found pictures that were the same size. All right, they're all 600 by 399. I did do a little bit of scaling on them, but not much. I think I doubled the size that they were originally. Okay. So I want to take this card that's right here. Come on. That one. And I want to copy it a bunch of times. All right, so here's another one. So how will it change? Well, this will now be website 02. All right. And the 02 one was Photoshop website or Photoshop site. All right. And then when I get done with that one, I'll want a third one in here. Hopefully I'm doing the copies in the right place. And that'll be 3. And that one will be, it looked like origami to me. I think that's how you spell origami. And that is website 3. All right. And then we will come down again and copy again. And this will be 4. And this I call space station site. All right. Then after that, we have number 5. And number 5 is called, oh, I skipped one. This one is not, let's see, after website 4, this is actually Art Deco site. So this one is Space Station. And then finally the last one, and that'll be website 06. And that one is called Juice Maker site. Now, if I save this, and I will, and look at it now, it's not going to look at all like I want it to look. All right. Well, it's not showing me anything. That isn't good. I thought I saved it. It should all be in there. File, save all, or just save. There it is. So there's 1 picture, 2 pictures, 3 pictures. So you see it. And I'm not saying it's terrible. All right. But it probably wouldn't be that presentable in an actual website. All right. So let's see if we can fix that. And how do we do that? Well, again, it's what you think. And that is we're going to jump over into our CSS now and start making some changes. All right. So again, you can see what I'm trying to at least do here is I'm trying to work my way down here, and I could have been better. So in other words, these would be, if I had any global settings. All right, then I could have come down here and said, nav bar. And I mean, you don't have to do this kind of stuff. It just makes it that much easier. Plus, if somebody eventually ends up maintaining your code, you're just showing that you could at least put a minimal amount of documentation in it. All right. All right. Well, you get the idea. So, and I put about and everything else, and I'll try to remember to fix it up a little before I give it to you. So we've ended last time with our resume. So let's go into the portfolio. And again, that had an H2 in it. So again, we'll have the font size of 3M and text align center. All right. And then we've got our cards and we've got our card that we've got to worry about. And as I told you, with our cards, we're not going to put much into here, but we are going to say display flex. All right. And we're going to say flex wrap. What that means is when we have reached the limit on our screen, rather than every single thing that's in there going into one big column, when the screen reaches a certain size, wrap around. And you'll see it in action in just a moment. And then for the justify content on there, we'll say space around. All right, just try to make it look a little bit nicer. Now, I'm not going to run it yet because that's the cards, but we still have some stuff to do for the card itself. Not a lot, but a little bit. All right. So let's do the dot card. So remember, we have one cards class, plural, and that is our flex container. All right. Then we have our card class, and that's each individual website or whatever you want to call it in this case. So I'm going to say here flex. This is the grow, shrink, and that's the percent that we want it to take up. All right, that's a shortcut. So rather than saying flex grow and flex shrink, you can combine them all together. I'm again going to set my background color to white. And again, if you were doing this professionally for somebody, you might very well, you're going to ask them what they want as far as colors and the like. I didn't care really about colors. That wasn't the idea behind this. Have a little bit of border radius on there to make it look a little bit circular. Out. And some padding. Some margin. Oops, forgot my colon. All right, so I've got my cards done and my card done. But remember that those cards, each one of those cards has an image. So what you oftentimes put in here is max width 100%, which basically means that regardless of the size, I want that image to take up as much space as it possibly can. All right, a few more things to put in here. There was an H3 in there too. So again, and this is all subjective as far as how you do this, but all right. And also you may or may not remember, we had a section in there we called output. And I added some padding there. All right. And finally, there were buttons on there. Okay. So let's pretty those up or whatever you want to call it. But I could have multiple buttons in here. So I'm going to say here dot card dot output greater than button, which again, I'm using one of these combinators to say that the only button I want to be changing here are ones that are under the output class or in the output class that's in the card class. All right. So again, we'll put some border radius in here. And I just decided to change the color. So instead of having like gray with black text or whatever, I put black background with white text. And again, this could be changed. You wanted to change it to. No border. Typically, you remove borders around buttons. Ten pixels all the way around. All right, so that should be everything. So let's see how that changed this. In fact, let's refresh here. I think I've saved. All right, so there we've got it. Now you'll notice that some of these go down more than other ones. Could we have fixed that? Yes, there's different ways that we could fix it. We could try putting in a break in here between like origami and site, etc., to push that down. It's not terrible the way it is, though. And let's see when we shrink it down what it looks like. So I'm going to shrink it quite a bit here. And you can see what we've done. All right. Again, is this perfect? No. There is a saying, though, that you've never heard, that you may or may not have ever heard of, that perfect is the enemy of good enough. All right. And you are never technically done with a website. You can be as nitpicky on it as you want. And I will tell you that if you're doing it for somebody, as far as they're concerned, you're never done with it. All right. Now, we did not put in any media queries in here. We put in nothing. All right. So let's see if we can make this look a little nicer by adding some media queries in here. All right. In fact, I don't think I added anything, to be honest with you. Oh, I did. I added one thing, I believe. And that is I came down here and I said .card flex auto to basically set it up for automatic. So let's see. And that doesn't look like it changed very much anyway. So there's a lot of ways this could be improved. Like I said, all right. When you look at it and you look at it here and you look at it at 100% because it's not there right now. So that's 100%. So that's how most people are going to look at it. So you can see it doesn't look bad there. And even when I shrink it down at 100%, again, it doesn't look terrible. All right. I could have played with that quite a bit more to probably make it look nicer than it does. All right. So the next thing that we have then is we've got our contact section. Now, what I'm doing with this contact section with you guys in this class this semester is more than I typically do this early in the semester. And what do I mean by that? What I'm saying is that we're going to build a contact form right now. And in our textbook, um, we don't go into forms until chapter 13, and we're on chapter 9. So this is a good prelude or whatever you want to call it to that. And let's see, does this work? There's that, there's about, there's resume, there's portfolio, and for right now, there's contact, which isn't doing much. So let's take a look at fixing up the contact section. Then we just have the footer, and literally that's it then. All right. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat here because I don't want to sit and have you watch me type. So I'm going to grab the completed one and then we'll go back and take a look at everything that's in there. And I don't expect everything that's in here to make sense to you. I do not expect that. In fact, let's just grab the footer too for now. So we've got that whole thing in there. And I can come into my section here and all the way down into my footer. Don't know if I needed that div or didn't need that div, but that's okay either way. All right. So let's take a look at it. First of all, probably going to be really, really ugly, and that's totally fine. But let's see what it looks like. There you go. So what do we have in here? The word contact. These are labels. The word name is a label. The word email is a label. The word subject is a label. The word message is a label. These three things in here are just called inputs. They're really text boxes. They're boxes. I mean, I can go and type in here now. All right. This thing that's bigger is called a text area. Maybe you've gone out. I remember when I moved to Missouri and I changed dentists and I was filling out a form. And, they had, name, address, city, state, zip, etc. And then they had hobbies and it was a little bit bigger. And they wanted to know if, for example, if I did some kind of a sport where I could possibly hurt my teeth a lot, whatever it would happen to be. And that's what this is. And then this is the submit button. All right. You'll notice that in here, this is already built in, so it's got a little bit of validation put in here. So if I don't put in an @ sign, all right, and if I don't put something at the end, right, so it'll take all that. But right now it looks pretty putrid, for lack of better words. So what do we have in here now? I just want to spend literally 5 minutes on this. All right. So we've got this section, contact. All right. We got a form. So forms are in a form, and it's in a class that's called my form. And inside of there, I've got a bunch of these things. So I've got a bunch of row forms. So that's the name that you saw. There's the label and there's the input. So that's that text box. And then there's the label for the email and the text box. And then there's the label for the email. All right. And the subject. And finally, here is the last one that's got that text area, that bigger area. All right. So that's everything that's in there. All right. And again, I don't expect that to make a boatload of sense to you right now, but let's go in and add some CSS to that and see if we can make it look, for lack of better words, at least presentable. All right. So we'll start. Remember that we said the thing was called my form. So again, my form will end up being a flex container by us saying display flex here. All right. And we want the flex direction, which is by default is row. We're going to make it column. All right. Justify content, space around. We'll give it a minimum height. We're going to align our text to the left, not center like we have been doing. Give it some padding. Give it a maximum width. Some margin. We want it to be centered in the middle of the screen, so 0 auto. And we'll give it a background color. And a couple times I've done this for you, but I'm going to use an RGBA. All right. And 0, 0, 0, meaning it'll be black, but I'm going to say 0.5. So I'm going to make it somewhat or half translucent, for lack of better words. All right. Now we're not done yet, but let's take a look at what we've done so far and see how that's changed it. All right. Looks pretty junky right now, but you can see the coloring. You can see some of the other stuff here with it. All right. Hopefully we can make that look a lot nicer. All right. So we're not done. So remember, what thing was called contact, and we had an H2 in there. So as we have been doing, font size, rem, text align center. All right. And each one of these was put in something called row form. This is where hopefully at least it's going to look a little nicer when we get done. All right. Again, we want this to be a flex container. All right, so that's our row form. A couple more things we want to put in here. The next is we want to make sure that all of the stuff that's in here follows certain things. So dot row form, form dot name, and dot row form dot email and dot row form, oh boy, dot subject. So those are the first three. Those are the things that all were in there with basically with labels and text boxes. We want to display inline block with no padding, no margin, and with a width of 100%. And then finally that subject with the subject line. Well, we'll see how this works. I'm looking at my own stuff as I'm doing it here, and I'm thinking there might be a mistake, but we'll look quick. So let's see when it's at its regular size. We haven't put any media query in there yet. But when it's at its regular size, did we make this look better? Oh my gosh, it looks just terrible. I don't know what the heck is wrong with this, but again, I've got a final copy that looks much better and we'll fix it up. I don't know what's wrong, but something is. All right, you can see the heading, or the footer rather, is just about finished too. Okay. We don't really have, I don't think I put in much in here for media queries. All right. Other than for the footer. Okay, and we can look at that, but it's really not much. Just for the footer, I told it the font size and I wanted it to be centered. All right. And actually, I think I did do a couple things in here. So let's do this. Since the header up here is black with white writing, I think we should do the same thing down here. So let's look here and we'll come in here and do footer. And we'll do the text align center. All right, we will do a background color of black. And we will do a text color of white. All right. Now. Weird things happening. Oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it? It'd been nice to put FFF there. Okay. So we've got that. And I'm not sure what's wrong with that. But again, the one that you're going to get is the finished product. And I probably tried doing this too fast. But the finished product that you have to look like this. And I'll clean it up even a little more than it is right now. So it'll look like this. Okay, and as you shrink it down, that, if I have time, I'll fix that. Otherwise, I'm just going to put it out there the way it is. But you can see that. There's all the sites. And there's the contact form. So you can see it's, again, it sure as heck is not perfect, but it's not terrible either. All right, it was just something I threw together. Actually, probably took me a couple hours to do that. All right. And that's the pretest. So like I said, you will get a copy of that after class today. All right. I shouldn't say you'll get a copy of it. I will put it out there. I will put it out there as a GitHub repository. All right. So a couple more things I wanted to show you here today. Okay. All right. This is what I'm showing you right here is unbelievably simplistic. All right. So why am I even showing it to you? Well, if we look at the page source, this is all of it. There is a CSS file, but what I want you to understand is what have we done here? I created a class called Flex Container that you're going to see in just a moment. And that Flex Container contains 3 different Flex items right there. Now, all they are divs with H3s in them. They could be anything. They could be a bunch of text. They could be pictures. They could be virtually anything you wanted them to be. But for the sake of simplicity, all right, for the sake of simplicity, I just made them what you saw. All right. So there they are, bigger. All right. So let's take a look in here at the styles. All right. And let me open this up the way I should open it. So let me close this. File save on that, and a file save on this, and a file close folder. All right, I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to open this thing up. And I'm going to open it up in code. Okay. All right. So, like I said, not much in here. Literally less than 25 lines. All right. And when we look at the CSS, what you'll notice is there's a bunch of stuff in here that is commented out. All right. And there are for lack of better words, a plethora of examples in here. And what do I mean? Well, right now, this is set to flex direction row. You've already seen this. You've seen what it looks like. All right. If I go and I'm going to keep this a comment right here, but I'm going to uncomment the flex direction column. So now it's the same thing that we had, but now it's flex direction column. Remember, flex direction row is the default. So you very rarely, if ever, see anybody put that in there. All right. Unless you're changing from column to row or whatever. So here I made it column. So let's do a file, save all right here. All right. And when we get done, let's take a look at it here. All right. And you say it didn't change. Well, it did. Let's make it back to where are we here? We want it to be at about 100%. So it looks like that. So in other words, you can see that rather than everything being in the same row, now each thing is in its own row. All right. And again, is that big a thing? No. But again, what I'm trying to show you in here are the different settings you can have. All right. So I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to grab this one, comment that one out. And now we're going to go into the direction. All right. So now notice that the direction is row. So it'll go back to row, but it'll be row reverse. Okay. So it's back to row, but instead of being 1, 2, 3, it is 3, 2, 1. And if I do the same thing here, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but I just want you to have hopefully some kind of an understanding of what's going on here. All right, so this is the columnar, but in reverse. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Okay, and then finally, if you weren't aware of this, and you probably were, but just in case you weren't, that by default, wrapping is turned off when you use Flexbox. Wrapping is turned off. What does that mean? That means that by default, when you have something like the other one that we looked at, all right? So when you have something, let's make the direction, hopefully, let's go back and make it row again, which is the default. All right. Okay. So when I go back and do this, so save all. And when it looks like this, by default, when you start to shrink this, what's going to happen is rather than it wrapping like this, so when it gets to a point, you can see now there's 2 and now there's 1. So hopefully you can see how that can be used, that flex wrap, that let's suppose, again, these were 3 different images, or maybe they were 3 images that had text below them or something like that. All right. But by default, so if I take this off, just to show you what happens here, I'm going to take the flex wrap and I'm going to comment it out. All right. So there's no wrapping taking place right now. What does that mean? Well, again, as always, it's easiest to show you what it means. So we've got this. Let me go back to here and let me refresh. All right. Now notice what happens. It doesn't do anything. So the natural or default behavior of this is not to wrap. So if you want it to be able to wrap, you have to tell it that you want it to be able to wrap. All right. Now there's other things that we can do in here, and I just want to show you some of these. All right. Now it says replace the line above with the following, which will make it grow, all right, which will be flex grow 1. All right. So again, I played around with a bunch of this stuff, but the idea is when you use this, all right, when you use flex, you can sit there and say, well, how do I want this stuff to be set up? All right. So if I say flex grow 1 in here and I have it in there for each one of my items, so let's do that. So let's comment this out. Okay. And we'll grab this flex grow 1, just that. In fact, let's do this. Let's keep it at 200 pixels too. All right. And put that in there, flex grow 1, like that. All right. So now let me do a file save all and look at it. Now, each one of these are 200 pixels. All right. And they still grow and they still shrink, except I guess we don't have the wrap on there anymore. But the idea is they will grow and shrink at the exact same size. Why? Because we put flex grow 1 in there. What I'm saying is we told it to apply this to every item that's in there. So let's do this. Let's leave that flex grow 1 in there where we've got item 1 right here. All right, just for item 1. So let me uncomment this. All right, and I'm going to put in here flex grow, and I'm going to put a 2 in there just so you can see what I'm talking about. Let me comment that line out here. Well, I can do it like this. All right, what that should mean is this should grow at twice the rate of the other ones. All right. Didn't appear to be working. Let's double check and make sure I saved. Right. We did say each one of these would be 200 pixels. Let's get that out of there. All right. That is now 2 times the size of these two. So as it grows, it is growing twice as fast as the other two are. And you may or may not have already guessed this, but if I come back in here, not there, in here, and instead of saying flex grow 2, I change it from grow to shrink 2. And again, I refresh. All right. What should happen in here is this, and it doesn't appear to be, but it is supposed to be shrinking then at 2 times the rate of the other one. All right. So I'm not doing the greatest job showing you this, but what I did was I just watched a few videos that were out there on Flexbox and just put some of the stuff in here. So I'm going to go back. When I get done with this, I've got a master copy and I wrote comments in here of different stuff that you can do. All right. And yeah. So I'll put that out there. I'm going to give you this as well. All right. And then I brought in another one. So let me this, and it'll say, do you want to save? Okay. So I've got another one here. Looks exactly the same, except I move stuff around, put a background in here, etc. But you can see it's as simple as the other one was because it is exactly the same as what the other one was. There's no changes. What is changed in here is the CSS. All right. And see what I tried to do in here. I put comments up the wazoo in there to try to go and add different things. So you could see that when you're justifying the content, you can center it, you can left justify it, you can right justify it, there's space around and space between. The difference between those is, do you have space around the ends or don't you have space around the ends? All right. I showed you how to align items in there to the left or to the right, or stretch where they'll just take up the whole thing. And there's even, I think, a thing in here with flex. Is there a flex basis in here? I don't remember. But with basis, you can change any individual one that you want to change. So notice I added this. So align self. What that means is all items here, I'm saying all items should do the same thing. So let's take this whole thing that's right here for just a second. I'm going to just cut it and save. And notice how this will change when we do that. It'll look very, very familiar to you. Come on, go back up there, would you? Thank you. All right, so it just looks like that. All right, so that's handling everything as one, for lack of better words, one kind of cohesive unit. All right, or whatever you'd want to call it. All right, but by adding these back, what I'm saying is, hey, I've got these three items, but the first one I want to handle differently. So that's align self. So the first one, I want to be way up in the upper left-hand corner. And with the third one, I want that to be way in the bottom right-hand corner. And since I don't have anything in here with item 2, that should do exactly what this says. So if I save that, it'll be exactly what you saw when we started here. That is, it'll look like that. So what I attempted to do right there was to give you some more examples of this. Because like I said, to me, this is as hard as it gets in this book. Again, you might agree, you might disagree. All right. So going to do, I'll be done literally in 5 or 10 minutes. But what I'm going to do when I get finished today is pretty this up a little bit and send everybody a copy. I'll send you a copy of all this stuff too that I was working on. All right, you can do with it what you want. But as I mentioned to you at the beginning of class, I would strongly, strongly suggest that you look at the URLs that I will be sending you a little bit later today. The CSS tricks, guide to Flexbox, this thing in here, which was the Flexbox cheat sheet. Go through that Wes Bowes class. And if you have time, watch the Brad Traversy video on Flexbox. All right. Now, when people say, well, I would do all that stuff, but I don't have time. I am dedicating 2 hours of class today for you to be able to look at that. All right. Tomorrow, again, I am going to give you one more example that I'm going to build from scratch that will be more, at least somewhat similar to what will be on your test on Thursday. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go through that, and then we will go through chapter 10, which is on CSS Grid. Thursday again will be the hot or the hands-on test number 3. It says chapters 1 to 9 on the test, but it's basically all on chapter 9. Next week, as we go through chapter 10, you will have a test just on chapter 10. Finally, and I've mentioned this before, but I'm saying it again, and that is, again, after yesterday, when we went over some examples, we did the chapter 7, basically for the Halloween, and we did the chapter 8 for the shape up, that if you have not yet turned in your stuff, and you want to turn it in for possible full credit, your chapters 7 and 8 written tests, labs, and homework are due by midnight tonight. Your chapter 9, so that's all you've got for this week for homework, is your chapter 9 written test, the labs, and the homework. So in other words, for chapter 9, you have to do the shape up and the Halloween. Next week, it's going to look just like this, except here it's going to say chapter 10, and it's going to say that it's due on the 19th. All right. I don't know if you have any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them. Otherwise, literally, that's all I have for today, and I will see you tomorrow.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.